Hello everyone and welcome to the Pokemon Masterclass. My guest today is a legendary Pokemon card collector and one of the original Pokemon YouTubers. Please welcome everyone, one of the most influential members of the Pokemon card community, Zach Browning, better known as Gem Mint Pokemon. Zach, how is it going, my friend?
What's up, man? How's it going? Happy to be on the podcast and talk some Pokemon with you.
Well, Zach, I am so happy to have you here, man. And I don't use that term lightly when I say influential. I've had several people on the podcast who have used the exact term when describing you. And so many people that I've talked to over the years, so many people that I've come in contact with. Just most recently, I had Pokemon Raider on the podcast, Z&G Emporium, and they both said the same thing. One of the people that got them back into Pokemon or their first introduction back into Pokemon cards was you. And I have to just tell you this story right off the bat because it's personal to me. Back in 2016, I was at that time I was a practicing financial advisor, and I was sitting at my desk one day, and probably should have been working, but instead I was scrolling through YouTube. And I've always been a fan of Pokemon, but my interest in the cards themselves, I had taken quite a long hiatus from those. Right. I used to go onto YouTube and I used to search for the Pokemon anime. You know, back then it wasn't on Netflix or any of the other streaming services that we have. I don't even know if those streaming services existed. But I used to go on and watch the original anime on YouTube. And it just so happened one day when I was scrolling through the feed that I came across one of your videos. And I can remember specifically, it was you were opening a legendary collection packs, booster packs. And I thought to myself, wow, I cannot believe that these are still out there. And it was that singular video. I believe that was I was looking back through your videos today, and I believe that was in February of 2016. And I just have to say it right here up front. That was the pivotal video that got me back into Pokemon, got me collecting, got me investing into this hobby. So right off the bat, Zach, I have to give you huge kudos, because I don't know if it wasn't for you, there probably wouldn't be a Pokenav. So thank you for getting me back into it.
Man, I'm just so humbled by that. I've got a huge smile on my face, and Pokemon Radar, John, and Z&G Emporium, they're both great guys, and I talked to both of them, as they got sort of back into collecting, and done deals with both of them as we go through, and it's just incredible. You can pinpoint it back to one video, because I remember where I was at in life at that point. I was living in New York, and I actually recorded that video back in Indiana. I think I went back to go see my family for a weekend or something, and I actually recorded like maybe 12 to 15 of those packs, and then I pulled the Zard or whatever on the second video, and I was like, who wants to see the rest of these openings? Like, we pulled the Zard, like, this is it. Like, there's nothing left, guys. Let's just stop it here. And I actually never posted the rest of those openings, because I was just like, dude, like, this is it. Like, just going for the gold there. So thanks so much for sharing that. That's very humbling. And look what you've created. I mean, PokeNav, up and coming, you're doing a lot of podcasts, a lot of great content. So very, very happy to be a part of that journey for you.
Yeah. And it's so fun to have these full circle experiences. I've said this to other members that I've had on the podcast, other guests, and, to see that, and then to actually see this come to fruition where I'm speaking with you today, one of the people that really influenced me to get back into Pokemon cards. It's just an amazing experience.
So when you first got back into it, were you just like how did you want to start? I mean, you saw a video, you're like, hey, I want to look on eBay, I want to find some more packs, or were you immediately like, I want to create content, or let's shift this a little more to PokeNav. Like where'd your mind go from there? I'm so curious.
Yeah, so initially I was just fascinated at the fact that these products were potentially still out there. I thought that many of these had gone by the wayside, that that the hobby itself, I had seen packs in stores and I saw Pokemon cards still in stores, but these vintage products, these products that I had grown up with, I had no idea that they were still out there. So the first thing that I did is I jumped onto eBay, started browsing around, and actually the first product that I bought back then, I believe it was in maybe the summer of 2016, was a base set unlimited booster box, and I think I bought it for maybe $850, right around there. And I just couldn't believe it. And what was funny is I started learning more, and I thought to myself, just from being a financial advisor, I thought from a supply and demand standpoint, there can't be that many of these still out there. So even at that time, I had enough cognition in the hobby to say, you know what, I think I might just keep this sealed for a little while and see where it goes.
Right.
And I did end up selling that same booster box in, I believe it was late 2018, which I horribly regret now. But so there you go, guys. PokeNav doesn't always make the best decisions himself.
The financial advisor and you said, take the gains. This is
yeah,
good.
Exactly.
There's a lot of risk here. Take the gains, but supply and demand, true collector, gotta hold.
Yeah. And then after that, I started learning more. Again, watched more of your videos. Started learning about PSA grading. PSA, I didn't know what that acronym meant from anything else out there, and started learning about grading and encapsulation and authentication and how to submit to PSA. Again, one of your videos, how to submit to PSA, that is where I started in learning how to submit cards, the proper way to submit cards, package up cards, all of those things. In fact, people still give me a hard time for using the sticky tabs on my cards because PSA apparently frowns upon that now. But that's still my strategy for submitting cards to PSA. And just kind of took it from there. And then it wasn't until last year that I finally decided to jump onto YouTube and sort of share some of the knowledge, the experiences that I had gained throughout the years and buying and selling and more of that investing aspect. And again, trying to bring a lot of the things that I had learned from being a financial advisor and trying to incorporate that into the collectibles and more specifically the Pokemon realm. So yeah, that's kind of the origin story and where it all went from there.
So you've gone full circle. You've become hobbyist, enthusiast, now educator, master class, and now you're giving back to the hobby. You're giving back, and that's what it's all about. It's about not only completing your goals, but helping your fellow collector complete their goals. And through this education and content you're creating, it's a great thing. So I think if everyone took the same approach and, treated the hobby as kind of this mutual, initiative that we're all working together and just trying to help one another, I think that is where the most benefit in the hobby comes from. I mean, it's great to hit a big card or get a good pull, but I mean, to see your buddy working on a set for 2 years, and then you help him with the last card, I mean, that is just as rewarding as completing my own set. So it's great to see you creating content and giving back.
Well, I truly appreciate that, man. Those kind words mean a lot. And I mean, you are one to speak from that angle because you have done so much for the hobby. And that's one of the big reasons why I wanted to bring you on today. Part of it is selfish because, I'm kind of fanboying here in a way because, like I said, you were the person that got me back into the hobby. But the other thing is you have so much knowledge and so much experience in collecting and building such an amazing collection. For anybody out there that isn't familiar, Zach has arguably one of the best collections I have ever seen. And I'm sure we'll get into it here today. But I really want to start off first, Zach, in kind of going back to the beginning for yourself and discussing how this amazing journey for you began in collecting Pokemon cards and what really gave you the impetus to jump in and go down this path.
Well, I always sort of tell the story of when I was a kid and, 99, getting, jungle packs for Christmas from my grandma and that nostalgic moment that sort of started it all. And so I just have this deep rooted nostalgia that constantly go back to some of the best moments of my life with all my family. And sadly, not all those people are still here today. But coming back to 2012 or so, that's sort of when I jumped in. I left college after my junior year, started working for a year, saved up around maybe 10 grand or so. And then I just basically had my bills paid. And I was like, where can we spend a little extra cash? And I mean, I was kind of looking at tons of things, and Pokemon just happened to be one of them. Very, very fortunately. I would hate to be the, I don't know, just random collector or something else at this point, but Pokemon just, it kind of worked out, and there's always this sort of risk. Anytime you buy something this year, you're always kind of hesitant. You don't want to go all in. You want to be careful. When you're buying something new, you kind of treat this investment or this purchase as, zero sum. It's just cash out the door. You're not going to get that back. So I basically bought a few PSA 9 base set first edition howls on eBay, and this price is going to kill you. It was between $90 and like $105. If I was paying over $100 for a base set first edition PSA 9 hollow, I was like, I'm overpaying. Like, this doesn't feel right. And then over time, some went for 75, some went for 90. And I was like, oh my gosh, they're going lower. I was freaking out a little bit in 2012, 2013, and basically put together a nice little set, maybe spent $1,400 altogether. And that's really how it started. I mean, this was like one purchase a week, maybe a month. I was probably buying at least one card a week, and very, very slow. Didn't include Jungle, Fossil, any of those products. And then I got to the point that I learned about Shadowless. I met Ed, Birdman. I met Gary, Haas, King Pokemon. Really started talking to Gary and, decided, well, I think I'm going to want 10s eventually. And, for me at the time, 10s were like $300. I remember buying a Mewtwo 10 for $300 and thinking, that is way too much money. This is crazy. So I ended up doing my first big trade with Gary, where I traded on maybe 12 to 14 PSA 9 base set hollows for maybe like 10 or 11 Shadowless PSA 10 hollows. I remember it was like 2 or 3 less, and ended up working out. But I mean, from there, that was like where it all started. Base, Jungle, Fossil, the goals expanded. One goal became 2, 2 goals became 5. All of a sudden, you're collecting 30 sets. And the real important point is to start small and start slow. You can't build Rome in a day, but you can start with one brick at a time. And that's where I was. And so the intention was never to be where we are today. The intention was just to go back to a childhood memory, relive it, and then just buy what I could. And I think at the time I was making like $20 an hour. And so my income was very different, and I did what I could. And so that changed over time, and the collection grew. And then eventually got to a point where it's like, man, Pokemon is big. I mean, the audience is huge. The market is huge. You got the video games, the collectibles, you have all this sort of stuff coming together. And it's like, there's really not that much risk with Pokemon. I mean, kind of like your, epiphany moment where it's like booster boxes are, not being reprinted. They're kind of limited. They're, no one's going to make more of them. It was kind of like, Pokemon's here to stay. And then at one point I just sort of went all in. I was like, all right, let's do it. Like, I feel very confident in every purchase I'm making. Everything's going up. So many people are coming to the hobby. And from there, it was a home run.
It's just so crazy to hear that, and even when I, talking about those prices, I can remember even in 2016 when I first jumped into it, absolutely nothing like they are now. But like you said, there is that risk there, that's that risk versus reward scenario of, even then I was thinking to myself, like, I probably, buying this stuff, I might be able to break even on it. But then again, over time, as I started to see it grow, I started to say to myself, okay, like there's more people coming in, as you said, especially after Pokemon Go and the 20th anniversary, we started to see a pretty big influx of people, started to see more content being produced on places like YouTube, and more people becoming familiarized with a lot of these sets, and started to see that opportunity as well. I'm interested to know how you got connected, because I know this is a really important aspect that I don't think a lot of people discuss enough in this hobby, and I think it's so integral, is your social contacts, being able to, either connect with a wider audience, or be able to get your name out there to more collectors, more people that can introduce you to products. I'm interested to know how you came across people like Gary Hayes and came in contact with them.
Yeah, I think the first like year or two, I was very private. Pretty much would just buy stuff, and I always kind of thought it was funny to like buy something and get removed from the market. Everyone would be like, "Who bought that? Like, who paid that?" Or it just disappears. And I was like fantasize with that, how it's like people would talk about it. And I think once you find E4, that's a great social network, great place to be, tons of articles, all that stuff. But there came a point where I just couldn't complete my goals on my own. The cards I needed were not on eBay. Kangaskhan, first edition PS10 from Jungle. Um, the one from Fossil, maybe it was Lapras at the time. But there were cards that literally were not available. And so I made a YouTube channel literally to reach out to other people and say, hey, I'm out here. Like, I'm a collector. Like, help me. Like I want to meet you guys. Like, what are y'all's stories? Who else is in this? And then I think what really surprised me was it wasn't like, a bunch of people from Indiana that were collectors. It was people from all over the world, as in the ratio or the kind of the distribution of collectors was very evenly spread between like Australia, the UK, all of Europe, and the United States. As in, there wasn't like a pocket of people that were just out collecting others like LA or something. I was really surprised by that, and through that you just build contacts. People reach out to you, people help you. Probably the number one thing that's helped me over the years was people being invested in my goals and what I'm trying to achieve. And I don't want to I think I always paid a fair price. I was always willing to pay above market, and that sort of helped me lock cards in that I wouldn't have otherwise locked in. As in, I was always willing to pay a fair price, and I think people knew that. I never tried to cheat anyone. I always offer everyone the same price for everything, regardless of how big you are, how small you are. I try to keep everything very, very fair. But through that, people would say, hey, Zach, I know you need T17 first edition. And I got the first one ever graded. Same thing with Ampharos, Rev, got the first one ever graded. People reached out and they said, hey, I want to help your collection. And just me being positive, I think humble in the process too. It's very, very hard to kind of keep that perspective. It's really allowed me to just lift other people up on the way. And, some of this stuff might sound cheesy or whatever, but like I take great joy and just sitting there and talking on Instagram, like for hours at a time with someone that might have just like hopped in the DMs like that night, and just hearing the stories, hearing the passion. And there's no other hobby like it. I mean, I've been a part of other hobbies, and there are a lot of sharks out there, and it's just one of the most rewarding things. So if you want to grow your audience, you want to answer your question, if you want to help, meet the context and all that, you really have to give back to the hobby. And for me, that was creating YouTube. It was educating people. It was creating content. It was, not replying on E4, little like one sentence, like witty comments. It was, typing a paragraph or two, walking people through things, you're not, bashing people or, it's very, very just positive. And I've always tried to avoid the drama. So if any drama comes up, I always try to take a step back. But once you learn how to give back, generally, it's just a net positive.
Yeah, and I totally agree. Recently, I had Pat Flynn on the podcast, and he used the term infotainment, and I think that's really appropriate. And the type of content that we're starting to see flourish, especially in Pokemon, is people who are giving back, people who are providing knowledge. And it's not to say that knowledge or that insight is always good or it's always beneficial, right. But I think you can tell, you can clearly see the people out there that are wanting to give back, that are wanting to spread that knowledge and information. And I think that's what people really, really want and they really appreciate. Yes, there is the entertainment aspect that still exists, but I think we're starting to transition more into that realm of infotainment, as the term he used. And it makes sense. It makes sense that even back then you were providing that to people. You were putting yourself out there and connecting with all of these different members of the community, and really cultivating and building that social network. And that, again, you were an early adopter in that sense as well before all of this really took off. And
ton of risk,
a ton of risk, definitely. But I think the point that you make is so poignant, in that if you're putting others first, and you're really looking out for the best interest of everyone, that kind of utilitarian approach, I truly think that it pays dividends to you in the end. I mean, you can probably vouch for this as well. I think any successful company out there, the thing that sets them apart and makes them sustainable in the long term is putting the interests of their customers, their clients first, and curating their products or their services around that. When you go into something from purely a monetary standpoint, and again, you see a lot of that in this hobby as well, people getting in or diving into this from purely the fiscal standpoint, it's not always a viable long-term strategy.
Yeah, and I mean, I'll give you another take. Like I'm a little selfish in the way that, like, I only really want to talk to collectors or like enthusiasts. Like if people are just in it for the money, or just want to know the right thing to buy or hold, or they don't really have that passion. I mean, like, I think we all flip to some degree, so calling them flippers, I think, is a little, like, maybe not the right word or term, but I never really gear any content or gear any messaging towards people who are kind of just flash, just in and out. Everything I do, I think even I talked to Pokenomics about it. He's like, my backgrounds are boring because I want people to be here that I want here. And I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting, because I was talking about that. I was like, why do you have your background that way? He's like, well, I want people here for the content. And I'm kind of the same way. It's like, I'll make it fun. I'll make it interesting. And I'll talk about, I want every video to be at least worth it. It's probably why I don't post a whole lot, because I want every video to be good. But at the same time, it's like, I want people that I interact with to be here because they want to be here. I want them to be, just truly invest in the hobby, passionate collectors. They want to learn, that they want to, broaden their scope and their knowledge base. But people that just want to buy and sell and just, try to make the most money. You kind of put off. I'm a little put off by it. And I mean, I don't interact with them. I interact with those people quite a bit when they reach out, but I don't really have that same motivation to just tell them they can just, just take advantage of the hobby. It just doesn't seem fair, right? When there's so many genuine people who are very limited by their means. I mean, our hobby is very young. I mean, our target demographics, like probably 25 to 35, with, being younger and younger, depending on what, series you're looking at. Nintendo EX, Diamond and Pearl, Heart Gold, Soul Silver. And we're kind of disadvantaged by people who maybe have more access to capital, or been around longer or older, or maybe didn't experience it as children. And so it's very easy to take advantage of a hobby in its infancy. And the people who are truly here because of the joy that we all had as children, when we first opened packs and while we're back, I think that's what attracts me to continue to help the hobby grow.
Yeah, it's so true. And I think that the thing that I love about this hobby as well is that I think at our core, I talked about it in that, I have a financial background, financial advisor. I did see Pokemon as a potential investment, much like I saw other alternative assets out there, gold, silver, fine art, things like that. But I think at most of our core, we are collectors. And I've always told people that in the end, like, my investing goals are so that I can reinvest back into my collection. And it's always a fine balance too. And I'm sure you've seen this over time, in that there is this dichotomy in that you're a collector and you add products to your collection, and then you start to see them go up, and there is that dark night of the soul, if you will, where you're like, oh man, there's that constant tug. And to me, I think a point that you made that I think is very well put is that there's really not a whole lot of differences between us. I think right now, not just in Pokemon, but really it seems like every aspect of life nowadays, it has to be black or white. There always has to be this us versus them, this schism that people try to put between others. And I really think, I've said it before, that the collectors, the investors, the flippers, the whomever, the people that are in this hobby, now we'll exclude the scalpers, and we'll exclude the people that are just doing egregious things. But really those big three, and the competitive players, cannot forget about them either. But we all really operate in a very symbiotic way, in my opinion.
Right.
The investors go out very often. They can bring things to the surface. They can bring things to market for the collectors. The collectors can educate the investors on things that could be a good long-term hold, something that they should consider holding for, X amount of years. The competitive players also, I recently had OmniPoke on, and he really turned me on to a lot of aspects of cards from the competitive standpoint that I had never thought of before, that really brought a whole new perspective to my eyes of, wow, yeah, that's really cool. That's something that I'd like to have a part of my collection. One specifically are those World Championship decks from the various World Champion players. And I really started to view those in a much different light after having that conversation with him. And so to me, there's just a lot less differences and more similarities and commonalities between all of us. And I think that's the great thing about this hobby, is that we can all kind of coexist together.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great word, coexist. And I think everyone has a place in this hobby. The market doesn't care about your feelings. The market's going to be the market and act rationally when it needs to. The investors create a lot of liquidity in the hobby. I think that's very, very needed. Like the high frequency traders that I'm sure you're familiar with, they create a lot of liquidity, make things easy to buy and sell, especially when you talk about a non traditional asset, an alternative asset, which is generally pretty illiquid. There's incredible amount of liquidity in Pokemon. When it comes to the scalpers, I think I put a lot of that pressure back on Pokemon. I put that on Target. I put it on Walmart. It's like, when you do your taxes, you want to pay the least amount possible without breaking the law. So if Target's going to allow these people to buy things at full retail and buy as many as they want, then, I mean, you can't hurt someone for taking advantage of that. I think we all have sort of a negative opinion on that, but I would put more of that blame on the institutions and the environments they create. I think that they're well aware of it. I think that, there's a lot of things they can do about it. But, going to the other sort of categories, I think there's a place in the hobby for everyone, and no matter what part of it you want to come about. I think more so when we talk about the sharks and that, it's like, I'm going to give an example here, PFM, Pokemon Flying Master. He is a very passionate Lopunny collector, just loves that one trigger Pokemon. And, there's probably no one else is going to pay as much for that particular Pokemon as him. You think the long-term 10-year, 10-year plan for that particular Pokemon probably isn't that bright. But at the same time, he's buying that because he enjoys it. It's his hobby. It's the goal he set, and that's what motivates him to participate in the hobby and at the level that he finds nostalgia. So, case in point that I think everyone is somewhat nostalgic to some degree, whether it's, that 99 as a kid opening a pack, or it's just growing up in 2006, 2007, 2012, watching the anime and, just falling in love with the hobby all over again. I think there's a place for everyone. I don't think anyone's in Pokemon without some sort of knowledge base of it. But there's a clear sort of inflection point between people who are purely buying for the speculative purposes, those are the people, that are very susceptible to getting burned. And those that just buy for, because they just enjoy. And I think over time, the people who speculate, some of them do very, very well. They're very educated, they're very smart, and they sort of have a leg up on others. They have paper hands. It's probably the way to put it. But, if you bought anything in 2006, no matter what you bought, generally you've done well. If you bought anything in 2018, generally you've done well. And so that's always been the case. And I don't think that'll be the case for every sort of card or set moving forward. And I can get into a few examples that may help you or help your content or your viewers better understand that. But not every decision going forward is going to be I guess, a positive investment decision, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
So let me just go into that example now.
Yeah.
So prior to Steam Siege, every single booster, I mean, let's just cut out all the 2003, 2004, because there were magazine articles where base set booster boxes were like $30 a box. I think everyone sort of is at least loosely familiar with that, where you could have bought a base set box in 2008 for $30. Crazy.
Mm-hmm.
But when you think like 2012, like on, every single box that had ever been printed from base set all the way to Heart Gold Soul Silver, Black, White was more than MSRP, more than $90, $100, let's call it there. So no matter what you bought, it was always worth more than what you paid. And it was kind of this moment in 2014, 2015. I was like, you can literally buy anything and you're going to retain value. Like, that's crazy. And then, of course, Pokemon had a horrible set. I mean, it almost sounds like Lord Voldemort when you say the name Steam Siege. It's like he must not say the name. And so Steam Siege was such a bad set, and people just overextended. They bought way too much, and they got burned really, really bad. And so now we're kind of at this moment again where 2020, 2021, every set that's ever been printed, you cannot find it below MSRP. Everything is high. And so, if you look back, it's like, if Pokemon makes a really, really bad set, I mean, Champion's Path was pretty bad, but it had Charizard. That's sort of the difference there. But, you could have a Steam Siege 2.0. And so I would just be very cautious that not everything is locked in. Returns aren't guaranteed. And just take a step back and have some perspective with a lot of the price movements or market movements, especially if you're, gambling with money you can't afford to lose.
Mm-hmm, for sure. And really, on that note, I'd like to ask you the question, since you started, what would you say has changed most, or what have you seen the biggest changes in the hobby since you first began?
That's a really good question. I had something on the tip of my tongue. I think there's a much greater appreciation of some of the older cards, WotC, especially some error cards. I remember there being 2 or 3 people that were buying error cards, and I was like 1 or 2 of them. And if I was ever getting outbid, I would just ping the other person and say, "Hey, are you bidding this?" He's like, "Oh my gosh, it's you." And it was like just a small world. Today I see people bidding on error cards that are just going for astronomical amounts. I mean, I think I got a Hollow Shift Jungle Jolteon for I thought I paid a pretty penny, but it was like, that was like my guy. Jolteon's my favorite, so I just had to go for it. I don't know if I'll ever be able to make money on it, but it was just a great card. And I cannot believe how many people are chasing errors. And the way I sort of put that type of collector is, you've collected everything else. What's next? No one wants to collect 50 base sets, but someone might want to collect 1 base set and kind of a funky looking Blastoise, a red dot Blastoise. And so it's a way to diversify your collection, to grow it, to further expand your experience with the hobby without just buying the same thing over and over again. Another example would be the amount of people who have just been captivated by EX series. I mean, Gold Stars. What an underrated set. Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
I remember talking to PokeRev in 2015 saying, he was like, "Man, should I buy EX boxes? They're like $200 or $300. I was like, dude, older, rare meant they're better. Go WotC all the way. Buy base set, buy fossil, buy jungle." I was like, dude, those $200 EX boxes, like, no, like they're just no. And man, was I wrong. I was so wrong. And there was an entire generation of people that that's all they knew and that's all they want. And they don't care about base jungle fossil. They care about Gold Star Rayquaza. There are 2 versions of it. They want both. They care about Latios, Celebi, all the Gold Stars. And I think you're going to continue to see pockets of those for Diamond and Pearl, Heart Gold, Soul Silver, things that pop up because they do have their own unique qualities and characteristics. But I think those have been people are already jumping on it. You're not going to be early in any of that stuff. So by no means is that like a hidden gem at this point.
Yeah. No, that totally makes sense. And if you think about it, each generation, we're starting to get to the point now where those EX, era boxes, sets, series, those were another generation Right. I feel,
Right.
you're talking about that 25 to 35-year-old demographic that is the largest demographic it seems to be in the Pokemon card world right now. Well, that's going to shift, and then it's going to be, the generations that came after us. I'm 30, and I was a part of Gen 1, 1999, stopped in about 2002, as I'm sure many of us did. But there were generations that came after that. There was people that came into, Diamond and Pearl era. That was their first introduction to Pokemon. And then Black and White, that was their first generation. And I've been saying the same thing. A lot of those EX era boxes and sets, those have just climbed astronomically. And so you start looking, you start forecasting into the future, and you start looking at, okay, well, what's really next? And then you start going into series like Black and White and Black and White base set. That was the first time that we saw full art cards, for instance, Zekrom and Reshiram. So that started a precedent for cards to come thereafter, and really has permeated throughout the hobby ever since. And so I think you're right. I think looking at those pockets and kind of understanding that generations to come will more than likely have a different taste for cards. They'll have a different taste for what they truly enjoy, whereas perhaps for our generation, it was the Charizard. Maybe for them, it's the, I don't know, full art trainer cards, or,
Put you on the spot here.
Yeah.
Who are the new Pokemon?
Yeah, I tell you what, it's tough, man. I'll open up some of the new booster boxes, and luckily I can pronounce them, but if you ask me what generation they were from, it would be difficult.
I remember
very solid in the earlies, but after that.
Yeah, I opened Champion's Path, and there was a Pokemon called like Alcremie or something, and it caught me off guard, and I was like, that is such a horrible name.
Yeah.
Like it just threw me off, and it's like, what's going to come next? And generally Pokemon, when you say the name, they like relate to something, so like Squirtle, like squirting water or whatever, like Blastoise, just blast, like you can always like see some sort of like context with the name there. But some of these newer Pokemon, I'm like, I think the Japanese English translation might have been off. Like it's like I'm trying to put two and two together, like, hey, what is this like representing? You guys are just doing shapes now, like but no, it's there's too many to keep track of, which I guess is why I didn't really buy a lot of Shining Fates. I just thought it was all newer generation, and I think the price and the demand and how many people were chasing this stuff. It's like, all right, I'd rather just buy the Suicune, buy the Ditto and the Lapras and a few others, and it's like for the price of one ETB, I've got all the cards I want. So
yeah.
I think you just have to take a step back, and Hidden Fates is going to be amazing, going forward, but I think Shining Fates has lost some of the steam, at least at this point that we're at right now.
Yeah, and it's a commonality, or it's a trend that I've seen going back, probably till at least Hidden Fates, I would say, where every set that comes after that, the set that's released is always really popular, and everybody's scrambling to get it. But as soon as the next set is released, it's like everybody's forgotten about that one. And it's like once Battle Styles is released, which by the time this this episode goes up, it will be the day after that Battle Styles is released. Shining Fates will probably become a thing of the past, and then all the focus will be on Battle Styles, and then whatever, I guess the next one is Chilling Reign. Everybody will be looking. It's like this constant hamster wheel where everybody is just kind of looking for the next set, and they come out, it seems, so fast that you don't even have a chance to try to complete the set before the next one's released.
It's like, has the normal collector just, the casual normal collector just participate in the hobby? I mean, you literally cannot open enough boxes to pull every card if you're just, working a 9 to 5, you got kids, a wife, and you maybe have, max $50 a week you can spend. It's like, opening packs is no longer the best option. You have to buy singles or trade. Or I remember I was at a card store like last weekend or 2 weekends ago, near Mint Games in Chicago. And basically the kid walked in, he had $25, and he just wanted one of the starters, like Charmander, Bulbasaur, Squirtle, and their mid-tier evolution, Charmeleon, War Turtle, Ivysaur, and that was all you could buy. Literally just a loose card, just a single. I think he got them from base set or something, but it was like that was all he could walk away with. Couldn't get a pack, and you want to step in, you want to help people every now and then, but it's just like that's just kind of where the hobby is, and it's just very difficult for the very casual collector to fully enjoy the hobby. But I mean, at the same time, Pokemon's giving the collectors a lot of stuff that they want. I mean, there's a gold Snorlax coming out in Chilling Rain. That looks pretty sick.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, you can't make everybody happy, but I think what Pokemon's going to do is they're just going to print product to oblivion. They are certainly expanding their printing facilities and the amount of product they can push out. That's confirmed. And I think people are going to be very surprised at their ability to meet demand.
I think so too. I think that now that we're nearing, or appear to be nearing, the end of the pandemic, and more people are going to be going back to work, vaccinations are much more ubiquitous now. I think we are going to have a very different summer and fall season for Pokemon cards. And I think everything that has been released during the Sword and Shield era, I think are going to get massive reprints. I don't think they're going to go further back than like Sword and Shield base set. I think they're really going to focus on the current series. But I think, Vivid Voltage, Shining Fates, all of these sets, I think throughout 2021, there's going to be plenty of stock on the shelves, in my opinion.
Yeah, I remember Team Up coming out on Broken Bonds with Tag Team, just the gorgeous Latios, like heart card. I remember just thinking, like, this is such a good product. Like, this is like high quality, like I love pulling it from the pack. Very, very enjoyable experience. And that was sort of the first time I got back into Modern and was just like buying singles and just enjoying the hobby for what it is. By no means am I an expert when it comes to like competitive play or what cards do this or that, or, building decks. I'm mostly just like the collectability, the set building, sort of production issues and, quantities and kind of who has what, and sort of a market maker when it comes to vintage. But I was just sort of blown away. And I'm toying with this hard decision right now. It's kind of going back to financial literacy and, all the stuff that you're able to preach is, should I sell my Modern cards? Should this Latios from Team Up, or from maybe it's on Broken Bonds, should it be like $1,500 on a 10? It's like, I love this card, but I mean, would I rather have $15 I can put back into like a Blastoise from base set? I can probably buy a first edition PSA, I don't know, maybe a 4 or 6 Blastoise from base set for like that same amount of money. It's like, does that make sense? Yeah. And so like, I'm really toying with, like, I collected these cards because I enjoyed them. I mean, I was buying those cards for very, very cheap right when they released, and, they were mint, so they graded well. But it's like, do I want to break up this thing I enjoy for, the financial reasons? And I don't know. It's just, I'm kind of torn with this decision. Is Team Up here to stay? Is Unbroken Bonds here to stay? I think Modern has incredible risk since a lot of it is still being printed. A lot of it very well easily could be reprinted. By no means is our first edition for any of the Modern stuff. Keep that in mind. And so, no, it's just kind of a decision I'm toying with right now, trying to figure out what the right thing to do is.
Yeah, and it is an interesting dilemma, and one that I've considered as well. Recently on one of my videos, each month I try to do an undervalued or overlooked series and try to uncover cards, products out on the open market that I think, are being overlooked or underrated by the market. And one of them was the Versus series from 2001. And, just using that example there of that price point of $1,500, you could buy up a good portion, probably 15 cards from the Versus series for that $1,500 in a gem mint status. And again, there's that disconnect there, that dissonance of, does this Modern card deserve the same type of price point, whereas I can buy 10 of these cards from 2001, is 20 years older, they're first edition cards, all of these really unique characteristics. and it's hard to say, well, which one is the right way to go. And in some ways it's nice to be able to have that flexibility, to be able to say, well, you know what, I actually would like to focus more on the vintage. That's more of what I'm interested in. And so maybe you do sell that Latios Latios and reinvest that back into other cards that maybe have more of a sentimental aspect to them, at least for yourself.
Yeah, and that's the crazy thing is like it's not like we have some secret that we're hiding that we're not sharing with anyone. Like everyone knows that Modern just has so much cash, so much being pumped into it. The prices are insane when it comes to some of these Charizards, and even just random full arts going for $150 in PSA 10. It's like there's like 100,000 of those that could very easily get a 10 out there. Like it's been printed to oblivion. Yet you have Modern, and fun little, like, I guess piece of advice, if I were to give advice to anyone, exclusive Japanese print like artwork cards from earlier sets are some of the most like underrated parts of the hobby, in my opinion. And a lot of people, what they do is they find out more sets exist. Like imagine if there was another set between base Jungle Fossil that you never knew existed, that were by the same artist at the same time. They just weren't in English. And so I was selling vending series PSA 10s for $30. And again, almost every card I sell, it was like something I was building for my collection. And then, you just get a bunch of extras over time. The intention was never to create a business. What happened was I just had a ton of extra cards, and all of a sudden you're in a business, you're filing taxes, and you're doing all this other stuff.
Yeah, you sort of fall into it.
But case in point, once you find out about VS series versus series, all the other sets that go in there, the 130 cards or so, and vending series 1, 2, 3. There's a lot of just beautiful hidden gems in that set, and it's taken off. So like vending series PSA 10s, I've seen some sell. I don't want to like pump the market or price gouge or any of that stuff, but I've seen some sell for hundreds of dollars. And to me, that doesn't like exactly make sense. But when you look at Modern, it's like, well, I mean, vending should be like $5,000 if you compare it to Modern.
Yeah.
So, case in point, the weird, going back to the initial point here, we all know that Modern just is priced it's in its own market. It is not relatable to the earlier sets. Like there's not the correlation that should be there. I'll get into something else here in a second, but it's like we all see it, we all know it. Yet the market doesn't care about your feelings. It's going to do whatever it wants to do. And it just kind of blows me away that, like, we know there's so much risk with Modern, yet it continues to rise, and cash keeps coming in and pumping it up. It's not like things are falling or cracking anytime soon, but I'll give you a second to kind of chime in there.
No, I agree with you. I think that it is, and I've said before, I truly believe that it's, the vintage market helps to prop up the modern market. And I also think what it boils down to, and we were talking about this before the podcast, is that right now there is still a knowledge gap that exists between people like yourself who have been in the hobby for a long time and people who are just getting back in. And people who are just getting back in, well, guess what? The things that they can afford, the things that they can find, the things that are most prevalent and most in their phase are modern products. And so that's where they're gravitating towards. Whereas, people like yourself, for me, having a financial background and kind of looking at the underlying factors or the intrinsic value of products, I start to see that disconnect. And I think over time, and I really want to get your perspective on this as well, the direction that the market is heading and the direction that the hobby is heading is, I think there's going to be more of a coalescence of knowledge. That gap is going to narrow, and more people are going to become familiar with some of the sets that we've been talking about today and starting to understand those factors. You talked about them before: older, rarer, minter, older. I can't remember all of them.
You got it.
Exactly.
You got to learn it, man. You're going to be an advisor. You got to learn it.
But they're going to start to learn those various factors, and it doesn't mean that they have to necessarily go back and they have to invest in like first edition base set hollows. but there's cards that are flying under the radar where you can start to pinpoint some of those characteristics that we saw in the sets that we're seeing the tremendous growth in, and they can pick up those products. And again, that's what I've tried to do with many of my series, because whatever happens with the market, as you said, people say, well, PokéNav, you're going to influence the market, or you're going to make these cards just skyrocket in price. And I tell people the same thing: the market is going to do what it's going to do, laissez-faire. The market is just going to operate as it is.
Free market.
Exactly. Regardless of what I have to say. So really, my approach is to try to provide people with those opportunities so that they can kind of put themselves in a similar position like you were in back in when you started, where you said, okay, yeah, I see the intrinsic value in these products, and I see the long-term potential. Yeah. Not to say that you wanted to sell those or flip them at some time in the future, but you really saw the inherent value in those products. And so I think that's where we're headed. That knowledge gap is going to narrow, and the market itself will just stabilize more and more as we go on.
Exactly. There's going to be less arbitrage, and you're going to see less sort of price differences and stuff. And I think you see a lot in sports as well today, just the prices gap narrowing. But another really good point is I always try to tell people, you don't know your buyer. The market today is so much bigger, and not everyone in the market is going to watch this video or watch my videos or your videos or even Scott's videos or Leonhard. I mean, the market is so much bigger than all of us. Mm-hmm. And it's not like, 2014, 2015, when you could literally name everyone in the hobby, like on a couple hands, that were buying cards over 10K. Mm-hmm. But there were very few. And essentially, you have to enter the market to really know how the market's going to react. So I had a really good friend of mine get a big card graded. He was going to take a deal. And I told him, I was like, you don't know your buyer. Like, you think you might know your buyer. You might know people who are interested in this, but you don't know your buyer. Now, fortunately, people still come to me and sell things, which I'm very, very grateful for, especially if it's collection focused. But the market is massive. But no, I had another point I was trying to think of, and about the hobby and the knowledge gap. I've noticed that like tremendously. A lot of things that I've sort of shared and told people, like, I learned from others, so it wasn't like I woke up one day and all of a sudden it's like, bam, Pokemon just uploaded into my brain. I mean, Elon Musk, maybe someday, but ultimately I learned, and I pulled from many, many sources, many online places, many videos, verified things myself, followed up with people. And, as a consultant, I think, we can take a lot of just messy information and provide a very clear, easy, action-oriented, assessment of what we've learned. And I think I've sort of been able to do a lot of that with a lot of what I've learned in the hobby. And I think people really appreciate it, which I'm grateful for. But at the same time, so many other people have branched out and shared that knowledge over and over and over, that the average collector today is so much more knowledgeable than the average collector in 2015. I mean, you can hop on eBay and just see like good find after good find, just rare cards. People have no idea what variant it is, that it's 19,000, base UK, or that it's the hollow bleed or double hollow this or that, or, OCMC, just every little variant. And so I think I was a part of it, but I wasn't the only part of it. I'm very, very proud of the knowledge the hobby has shared, and how open we are, and how sort of inviting we are as well too. I mean, the content you're creating here today, and the content you have been creating over the last year or so. But like you said, you think going forward it's going to tighten even more. And just my perception today is like, I almost can't believe how much people know that are just very new to the hobby. It blows me away, and I really am just thankful that we're at the point we are now.
Yeah, and I think that it really culminated at the right time in all actuality, in that Pokemon really took off even more with the pandemic, more people at home, more time on their hands. Also, I think the the trepidation that they had with the other financial markets out there, they started looking, well, where else can I possibly put some money that has some appreciable value to it? And that brought so many people onto YouTube or to other platforms and learning about Pokemon. And it just so happened that at that time we had more people, we had more content creators, we had more, people like yourself, myself, SM Pratt, even Leonhard, people out there that were providing this information to a much wider audience. And now you've got even more eyes on that. The only thing that I worry about is that at some point, like it's like information overload for people who are just getting in, where it's like, oh my gosh, like you talking about all these variants, and now you've got this grading and you've got values and all these things. And I think in the end, what it really boils down to, and everybody that I've talked to, it's always been the same. When you start out, just start out in what you enjoy. What cards do you enjoy? What Pokemon do you like? What eras do you like? Start out there, learn what you can, and then move on. Maybe venture into other series, into other years. But just start with what you enjoy. And I think that really harkens back to the fact of being a collector at heart, going back to understanding what it is that you truly enjoy in this hobby, starting from there and then branching out wherever the hobby takes you.
Yeah, and you just have to set a goal. I mean, what you're saying is perfect. I think it's great advice to anyone entering the hobby. And, we can dive into that just a little bit more right now, but you really just want to set a goal. It doesn't matter what that goal is. It can be anything. What do you find value in? What brings you back? When you open your phone, you hop on eBay, like what are your saved searches? Like, what do you get excited to see? And when you see it, you get goosebumps, like what gives you just that childhood feeling? And so there are a few ways to be responsible with pursuing a goal. And I think, some of those are just being as knowledgeable as possible, leveraging, the people in the hobby that can give you insight, maybe inside information with, maybe who has, quantities or where you can find things. But a lot of times when you're pursuing a goal, it comes down to price. And so, you could buy low, buy high, you could buy fair value. And that is going to make more of an impact, what your entry point is versus what goal you pursue. So case in point, I always try to share with people, the money or the value isn't made in the transactions going back and forth. Yeah, obviously you can rotate capital, you can flip inventory, and that's going to help some people more than others that put in the hours and grind. But the true value, the true growth in the hobby is made by increasing the pie. It's made by more people coming to the hobby, building a foundation for the new collectors, the new kids, the new competitors, all the people who are participants in the market. So that includes the scalpers, that includes the flippers, that includes the investors, the liquid capital that comes in the market, that includes us, the long-term collectors who are setting goals, that includes the speculators, it includes everyone in the entire hobby. But as long as more and more people keep entering the hobby, it sounds like a Ponzi scheme, but it's not, I promise you. That is where most of the value comes from. It doesn't come from flipping a dollar here or there. It comes from literally just the hobby growing and all the prices sort of elevating, the inflation, I guess you can call it. We can think of a term for it. I'll defer to you for the specific term, but we can call it some sort of inflationary term or something. But you want to see it steadily increase over time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's really appreciation. I think would be,
there we go.
A really, and that's what I saw in Pokemon. I saw, especially with vintage, I saw a product that had limited supply. I mean, at this point, for many products from Wizards of the Coast, we can accurately predict how much supply is actually out there. For others, we can't, but you have a limited supply, you have a very strong demand, you have a product that is tangible, which I think more and more people are gravitating towards the actual tangible products that have intrinsic value. Right. And I think you have all the makings of an appreciable asset. So I think you're right. I think the more people that we have come in, the larger the hobby grows, the stronger it becomes, the more knowledge that we have, because people who are new now will be the Zach Browning will be the gem mint Pokemon, or at least have the potential, to be that type of person who is, so egalitarian and wants to spread the knowledge and the experiences that they've gained along the way. And yes, you'll have the nefarious sorts, but again, it doesn't matter what market, it doesn't matter what hobby out there. There's always going to be those various archetypes, and honestly, it makes it interesting. It makes it interesting, and the people who are doing the right things are those are going to be the people that flourish. Those are the people that are around for the long term, and ultimately, that's the kind of community that you're cultivating. So I absolutely love that. And before we wrap up here, Zach, last question that I have here for you is I want to know, and I'm sure everybody out there is curious to know, what's next for you? What's next for your collection? What can the community as a whole look forward to for Gem Mint Pokemon?
Oh man, it's such a tough question. I have so many ideas that are going through, and I regret maybe not monetizing what I've done more. Real Breaking Nate, got in the hobby in 2014. Leonhardt got in the hobby in 2014. I started my YouTube channel at that time. As in, I didn't necessarily take advantage of maybe some of the income streams that were out there. And I think I would like to maybe try to find a way to make this a more full-time gig. Mm-hmm. And so I have 3 or 4 ideas going through my head that would help that. I think it would be a net positive, as in it would certainly help a lot of the people who have followed my story and subscribed on either Instagram or YouTube, one or the other. And so I'm really hopeful that at some point this year I can sort of talk more about those items. But the challenge is, a lot of things I chase are very specific. They're very niche. They're very just small. And it only takes one other bidder to outbid you on something. So it's not that I think prices are going to go up. It's that one little rare thing, I just need to make it the right person aware. And then all of a sudden, I'm losing sort of my collection goals that I'm chasing. But every time I think about a video I want to make, it's like something else pops up. And it's like, oh man, well, I'm going to lose that auction if I talk about it, because I don't have $1 million in cash. So, it's definitely you can call it a cash poor hobby, because I think there's always just so many things to buy. But no, I have some really good things I'm working on. Some things I would love to become more active in the hobby. I think at some point I would like to do video on camera, especially come back with you and do that. I think that'd be great. But I don't want to sit by the wayside as I have been over the last few years. I really want that to change. So I'm open to feedback if anyone has any feedback. So certainly open to taking that next step with some people.
Well, if it's any consolation from me, Zach, I mean, I think you've got the tool at your disposal right now. In your current position, you're a consultant, correct?
Yes, work in management consulting, and we're on the focus on the healthcare side.
Well, I think that if you brought over those same skills, that same skill set, if you will, to Pokemon, I think that would be an invaluable asset to this community, because as you said, there's a lot of big items out there. There's a lot of people out there who are wanting to spend money on big items, whether it's for their collection, investing purposes. And I think, as we said, the biggest asset and the thing that most people are looking for right now is that information, is that knowledge. Mm-hmm. And you have that dialed in. And I think if you cultivated the consulting skill set that you already have, brought that over to Pokemon, not only do I think that it would be very beneficial for you in being able to do something like this full time, but also that just helps the hobby even more. And you can probably vouch for this as well. I know for myself, whenever I am all in on something, mm-hmm. I would much rather pay somebody for the knowledge that they have. I mean, obviously you've seen that in the consulting world as well. Companies, individuals, They're willing to put forth the financial means in order to expedite the process of getting from point A to point B. And I think that would be so fantastic if you decided to incorporate that into Pokemon as well.
Yeah, and I don't want to go too long here, but I mean, work really takes a lot of my time and attention, and a
Mm-hmm.
lot of my just mental just ability. Like last week, we were on Teams calls, like literally from 7 a.m. to like 10:30 at night. Like not like we're working on a computer on Excel, like literally on a call with someone talking through things.
Wow.
And like those days can just be mentally exhausting. And then, I'll be on, my phone on IG, just talking to people, messaging people when there's like lulls or I'm not speaking or something. But not every week is like that, but we do have times where it's impossible for me to just, crank out a video. Cause if I'm not
Mm-hmm.
working, I'm like, let me go buy groceries. Let me, go do this or that. So I think, going full time would certainly open up doors. And I can think of so many different value opportunities in the hobby, just things that don't exist that have a certain place in the hobby that will just be generational businesses for those that can.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's opportunity, but I'll just throw out an idea right now. It's like I've even thought about just Patreon, and a lot of times people, when they need advice, are like, "Well, what's your investment horizon? What's your goals? Like, what's this and that?" And it's like I could just go to the dark side and just say, "Hey, how much money you have to spend, and what's the best thing to buy?" And I'll just tell you right off the bat, because I think
Mm-hmm.
there's some very clear opportunities. But I don't need a 30-minute story. I can just tell you right away, and I think people appreciate that. You're giving the CFO a 10-second, update. How do you handle that with Patreon? So
Mm-hmm.
I've never done that because I thought it would take away from sort of the genuine innocence part of the hobby that, I think I mentioned this before the podcast, but, it's like you don't want to work at the restaurant you love because you're going to hate the restaurant. So
Yeah.
it's like, if the hobby becomes income, am I going to hate the hobby? Because the
Mm-hmm.
hobby is sort of one of the best parts of my life. And I don't want to lose the appreciation, nostalgia, and all of just the great things that come from it. So, I'm happy to talk offline with you. And if anyone listening to this has ideas for me, I certainly am all ears. But I think there's a lot that can be done. And I just don't want to lose any brand or images or imaging
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to making any of those decisions.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Zach, all I can say is I think no matter what decision that you make, what endeavor you decided to pursue, I can say that I would love to see it. I know that probably most of the hobby would love to see it. And the most important thing is I know that you would go into it with the best intentions and the foreknowledge of being able to help as many people as you possibly could, because that is exactly what you've done from the very beginning and have not asked a thing from anyone else. So from the bottom of my heart, as I said, you were one of the pivotal people who got me back into Pokemon cards. I know there's a lot of other people out there who have viewed you as a major influence. And I just want to thank you so much for being on the podcast and taking the time to speak with me today. It's been a real treat for me. And all I can say is, I wish you the best of luck with no matter what it is that you pursue. And as I said, whatever that happens to be, the hobby as a whole is in for a real treat.
Thanks so much for having me. It was a pleasure to be here. And I look forward to the next one and the many other guests you have. So certainly can't wait to tune in.
Perfect. Well, guys, be sure that you check out Gem Mint Pokemon. You can check them out on YouTube, over on Instagram. Zach, is there anywhere else that people can find you?
I do keep an active wants list on E4. So if you ever want to see the cards I'm looking for that I'm ready to buy in my active wants, you can check that out. I got links, and I think in all my YouTube videos I have a link. It's come help me out. So that would be appreciated as well too.
Perfect. And I'll be sure to link that up in the description as well. But again, Zach, thank you so much for being here, my friend. That is going to do it for today, guys. We will see you all next time right here on the Pokemon Masterclass. Take care, everybody.